Good morning, Boker Tov. Welcome back to 10 Minutes of Meaning. Please help yourself to coffee and donuts. I want to thank our generous series sponsor for the year, Jeffrey Gelb, who sponsored Mesillas Yesharim in memory of Meshulam and David Shem Dobaz, David Avner ben Avram HaKohen. Please note, the new sponsorship opportunity is coming up. You could sponsor 10 Minutes of Meaning for people around the world. Please contact Lee at lee@brsonline.org to find out more. We are finishing up the 19th parak, the 19th chapter of Mesillas Yesharim. The Ramchal has been helping us chart a course towards a better version of ourselves, to live with more mindfulness, more vigilance, more enthusiasm, more energy, to be able to live with more precious and nikias. And we're learning about Hasidus, what it means to be a Chassid. A Chassid is a mentality, it's a perspective, it's an attitude, it's a vision through which we live in this world. And we last left off, very appropriate for this time of year, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oev El L'mishu Oev Es Yisrael. Hashem only loves those who love His children. If you're an Oev Yisrael, if you love His children, He loves you. But if you're cruel and unkind, if you're insensitive and obnoxious to His children, then of course He's not going to love you. So the fastest way, the biggest school to be beloved by Hashem and to tap into the Shefa Bracha that we all want from Him is to practice and demonstrate the greatest Avos Yisrael. Person asked, this is how the Ramchal is ending this chapter on the Chelkei Chasidus, the different parts of Chasidus, is that a person has to tovas hador. A person has to be concerned not only for their individual personal well-being, but a person has to be concerned and devoted to the tovas hador, the generation, the well-being of the generation, the spiritual, physical, material health of the generation, to be devoted and dedicated not only to ourselves, but to our community and to those around us. והוא ענין Kohen Gadol. And that's why the Kohen Gadol was held accountable. The Gemara Makos says, לבקש רחמים דורם בקשו. Why is the incarceration, the term, person who kills b'shogeg, a person who kills by accident, is in an ear miklat for the length of the life of the Kohen Gadol, so much so that the mother has to go and bribe, and the mother has to go and beg the inmates not to beg, not to daven for her son to die. Why is it connected or linked to the Kohen Gadol? The answer is because the Kohen Gadol should have lebaksh rachamim al Dורem. The fact that even accidental murder could have happened under his watch. He wasn't davening sufficiently for the generation. What an awesome, awesome responsibility. Amru, Daakhlia, Arie, Berachok, Prasy, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. The Gemara there tells a story. A person who was devoured by a lion at a distance of 3 parsos from Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. Aשתעי Alyov ba'adei Tolasa Yomei. And as a result, Alyov did not appear to Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi for 3 days. He was bereft of that feeling of contact with the tzaddik, with Eliyahu Hanavi. You see from this Gemara in Makos the responsibility, the awesome weight and responsibility, particularly of the righteous, to daven for their generation. Ravolba writes in Zriya Ubinyan in his wonderful book, Planting and Building. Yitzhak's here, his grandson. I'm sure he lived it and applied it too. He says this is the primary responsibility of a parent, is to daven for their children. Of course, we nurture and we love and we protect and we support and we do all of those material, physical things for our children and their well-being. But central and primary to the responsibility and role of a parent is to daven. So many parents do so much else. They spend gazillions of dollars on tuition to put a roof over their head and to send them to the best summer camp. They invest in their clothing and their food and tutoring them. They invest in their lessons. Parents are entirely and fully invested in every which way. But then they forget to daven. They don't daven. Primary responsibility of a parent is to daven for their children, to think about them each and every day. I actually have a card that sits here on my stender and in my sitter. I have my children's Hebrew name, Ben, Bas, their mother, a little Yehiratzon that's composed by the Chida every single day in order to remember. It's easy to forget. Please God, if your children are healthy and well, it's easy to take it for granted and go on in life. Rav Ober writes, every day, review each name, think about their needs. This beautiful little tefillah, Yehiratzon, from the Chida, to daven for our family, for our physical, emotional, spiritual well-being. That's the responsibility. To care about B'nai Dórem, our generation, and our generation begins with our family, the concentric circles that we live in. We daven for ourselves, then we daven for our nuclear family, we daven for our community, and we daven for Klal Yisrael, and we daven for the entire generation. And with this, the Ramchal ends this 19th parak. We've now defined, we've now reviewed the primary components of Chasidus, of what it means to live with virtue and what it means to live with piety. Pratehem mesurim l'chol bar seichel u'l'chol leiv tahor. And now the Ramchal, in this little throwaway line at the end of the parak, tells us the necessary ingredients. What are the criteria in order to achieve this level, in order to become this person, in order to live with this chasidus? He says you need to be two things, a bar seichel and a leiv tahor. Both sound easy, but neither are simple. Both are very difficult. What's a bar seichel? You have to be a bar seichel. You have to be a thoughtful person. You have to have common sense. You have to have logic. You have to be mindful. You have to be a bar seichel. You have to be a thinking person. But you also need to have a leiv tahor. You need to have a pure heart. L'hisnaheg bam b'derech hayashar l'fi hasharashim ha'ela kol davar be'ito. To implement in a just manner, in according with these principles of piety, kol davar be'ito, everything in its right time. How do you apply chasidus? When do you have ava? When do you have yira? When are you forgiving and flexible? And when are you principled and strong? How do you apply chasidus in every circumstance? Kol davar be'ito. Everything in its right time. Everything in its right way. What do you need in order to know what to do? You need to be a bar seichel and you need a leiv tahor. You need to be smart, intellectual, thoughtful, mindful, and learned, but you also need a pure heart. You need to be good and kind, have a purity of heart. We know people who had tremendous seichel, but they had a leiv tameh. They didn't have a leiv tahor. The Germans, Yimach Shemam v'Zichram, the Nazis, a brilliant generation who were supposedly advanced culturally, intellectually, bar seichel, and yet leiv, their heart was rotten to its core, evil and wicked. And there are people with a leiv tahor. They're innocent and they're pure and they're sweet and they're delicious and they have a good heart. They have no seichel. They're not informed. They're ignorant. They're not informed. They're not mindful. They're not thoughtful. They're not knowledgeable about Judaism, Yiddishkeit, about Torah. In order to be able to know kol davar be'ito, everything in its right time, how do we apply the chelkei chasidus? When, where, how? We need to find the balance. Bar seichel leiv tahor. These are the pursuits and these are the ambitions. Our children should know we're raising you, and our goal, it's not to get into that school, it's not to get this score on an SAT. Our goal for you, to be a bar seichel and a leiv tahor. We want you to be a bar seichel and a leiv tahor, and then you will have the tools to be able to live with chasidus. We'll just begin the opening sentence of Perachov, the 20th chapter, which is Mishkala Chasidus. How do you assess piety? We now defined it. That's what we spent the last many months, the 19th parak. How do you evaluate and assess? How do you know if you're living with it accurately, authentically? So now we need to explain how to assess this kind of piety. And this is very fundamental, very, very important. V'teida, know, be'emes, in truth, shezohi ha'malacha ha'kasha shebechasidus. Knowing and assessing and evaluating in each moment, being honest and genuine with ourselves. Who are we? What's demanded of us in this moment? Be'emes, in truth, it is a malacha ha'kasha bechasidus. That's the hardest thing. Hardest thing is to be true to ourselves and to know. Are we motivated purely? Are we driven l'shma, l'shem shemayim? Are there external factors? To be honest and genuine with ourselves is the malacha ha'kasha bechasidus. Rav Dan Segel in his new parish on Mesillas Yesharim, he highlights be'emes, as if the Ramchal, you know when someone says to you, you want to know the truth? What are you going to say? No, lie to me? It's like the Ramchal says, v'teida be'emes. You want to know the truth? What was the alternative? Ramchal, lie to us? Are you going to lie in the Mesillas Yesharim? What does it mean, no, be'emes? What's the opposite? He's going to offer some sheker, some good sheker? Be'emes means that it's difficult to get down to the level of emes, to know the truth. Ki dakuso rav. It's difficult because there are subtleties involved. There's nuance involved. V'yesh liyetzer b'davar hazeh knisa gedola. And the Yetzer Hara knows how to penetrate, knows how to sneak in. Al kei nimtze sakana atzuma. It's an enormous danger. Ki harbe dvarim tovim yuchal yetzer l'racha ki ilu heim ra'im. So what happens is, what's demanded of us in that moment, to stand up, to speak out, to be principled, the Yetzer Hara explains why that's not nice and you have to be sensitive. Or on the other hand, in a moment where you should be quiet, stay silent, be sensitive, Yetzer Hara says, no, you're Pinchas. You need to be a zealot, Kanayim Pogambo. You need to stand up and drive a virtual spear through people. So because Chasidus is so delicate, so fragile, it's so nuanced, it's also wide open for the Yetzer Hara to sneak in and to misguide us and misdirect us and come to the wrong conclusion. And that's why this next parak is so key and so core. Mishkal HaChasidus. We know what it is in theory, in principle, we've defined it. But how do we apply it? How do we live it? How should it manifest? A person has to always ask themselves if they're being authentic. And we continue with that in Mirz Hashem next week. If you'd like to sponsor the entire series for the coming year, it's a great schus, an honor and memory for you, for your family. People, Baruch Hashem, listen all over. Get tremendous schus of helping spread the message of Mesillas Yesharim. Please be in touch with Lee, Lee@brsonline.org. Until next time, stay happy, stay holy.